embracing of the whole world. I got to know Srila Prabhupada ki.
Jai. 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 Hari Hari Bol. Jai. 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 Jai.
All glories to the Son of the Lord. All glories to the Son of the Lord.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
All glories to the Lord.
Jai Prabhupada. Oh, Aisha.
Shares are the end.
I'll set up the mic. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Namo Krishna Paraya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namahe Namaste Saraswati Deve Gaurapani Pracharane Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Paschata Desatharane Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Reading in Srila Prabhupada, Lilamrita, Chapter 1. When Abai arrived, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta was already speaking. He sat with his back erect, a shawl around his shoulders, not speaking like a professional lecturer giving a scheduled performance, but addressing a small gathering in his room. At last, Abai was in his presence again. Abai marveled to see and hear him, this unique soul possessed of Krishna Katha, speaking uninterruptedly about Krishna in his deep, low voice, in ecstasy and deep knowledge. Abai sat and heard with rapt attention. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati had been speaking regularly about Sambandha, Abhideya, and Prayojana. Sambandha is the stage of devotional service that in which awareness of God is awakened. Abhideya is rendering loving service to the Lord, and Prayojana is the ultimate goal, pure love of God. He stressed that his explanations were an exact recapitulation of what had originally been spoken by Krishna and passed down through disciplic succession. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati's particular utterance, mostly Bengali, but sometimes English, with frequent quoting of Sanskrit from the Shastras, was deep with erudition. It is Krishna, said Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, who is the only superlord over the entire universe and beyond it. of Vaikuntha, the transcendental region. As such, no one can raise any obstacle against his enjoyment. An hour went by, 2 hours. The already small gathering in Srila Bhakti Siddhanta's room gradually thinned. A few sannyasis left, excusing themselves to tend to duties connected with the parikrama camp. Only a few intimate leaders remained. Abai was the only outsider. Of course, he was a devotee, not an outsider, but in the sense that he was not a sannyasi, was not handling any duties, was not even initiated, and was not traveling with the parikrama, but had joined only for a day. In that sense, he was an outsider. The philosophy Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati was speaking, however, was democratically open to whoever would give an ardent hearing. And that Abai was doing. He was listening with wonder. Sometimes he would not even understand something, but he would go on listening intently, submissively, his intelligence drinking in the words. He felt Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati revealing to him direct vision of the spiritual world, just as a person reveals something by opening a door or pushing aside a curtain. He was revealing the reality, and this reality was loving service to the lotus feet of Radha Krishna, the supremely worshipable personality of Godhead. How masterfully he spoke, and with utter conviction and boldness. It was with such awe that Abai listened with fastened attention. Of course, all Vaishnavas accepted Krishna as their worshipable Lord, but how conclusively and with what sound logic was the faith of the Vaishnavas established by this great teacher? After several hours, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati stopped speaking. Abai felt prepared to go on listening without cessation, and yet he had no puzzling doubts or queries to place forward. He only wanted to hear more. As Srila Bhakti Siddhanta made his exit, Abai bowed, offering his obeisances, and then left the intimate circle of sannyasis in their row of tents and went to the outer circle of tents, his mind surcharged with the words of his spiritual master. Now their relationship seemed more tangible. He still treasured his original impression that had sustained him for years. And Allahabad had been enriched and filled with new life. His spiritual master and the impression of his words were as much reality as the stars in the sky and the moon over Vrindavan. That impression of hearing from Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati was filling him with its reality, and all other reality was forming itself around the absolute reality of Srila Gurudev, just as all the planets circle around the sun. Next morning, Abai was up with others more than an hour before dawn, bathed and chanting mantras in congregation. Later in the morning, a stately figure, the tall stately figure of Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati, dressed in plain saffron, got into the back seat of a car and rode away from the camp. Thoughtful and grave, he looked back and waved, accepting the loving farewell gestures of his followers. Abai stood amongst them. A little more than a month later, Abai was again anticipating an imminent meeting with Srila Bhakti Siddhanta, this time at Allahabad. Abai had only recently returned from Vrindavan to his work at Prayag Pharmacy when the devotees at the Allahabad Gaudiya Math informed him of good news. They had secured land and funds for constructing a building. The Sri Rupa Gaudiya Math and Srila Bhakti Siddhanta would be coming November 21st to preside over the ceremony for laying of the cornerstone. Sir William Malcolm Haley, governor of the United Provinces, would be the respected guest, and in a grand ceremony would lay the foundation stone in the presence of Srila Bhakti Siddhanta. When Abai learned that there would also be an initiation ceremony, he asked if he could be initiated. Atulananda, the Math's president, assured Abai that he would introduce him to Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati. At home, Abai discussed his initiation plans with his wife. She had no objection, but she did not want to take initiation herself. They were already worshiping the deity at home and offering their food to the deity. They believed in God and were living peacefully. But for Abai, that was not enough. Although he would not force his wife, he knew that he must be initiated by a pure devotee. Avoiding sinful life, living piously, these things were necessary and good, but in themselves, they did not constitute spiritual life and could not satisfy the yearning of the soul. Life's ultimate goal and the absolute necessity of the self was love of Krishna. That love of Krishna, his father, had already inculcated within him, and now he had to take the next step. His father would have been pleased to see him do it. What he learned from his father was now being solidified by someone capable of guiding all the fallen souls of the world to transcendental love of God. Bai knew he should go forward and take complete shelter in the instructions of his spiritual master. And the scripture enjoined, he who is desirous of knowing the absolute truth must take shelter of a spiritual master who is in disciplic succession and who is fixed in Krishna consciousness. Even Lord Chaitanya, who was Krishna himself, had accepted a spiritual master. And only after initiation did he manifest the full symptoms of ecstatic love of Krishna while chanting the holy name. As for the ritual initiation he had received at age 12 from a family priest, Abai had never taken it very seriously. It had been a religious formality. But a guru is not a mere officiating ritualistic priest. So Abai had rejected the idea that he already had a guru. He had never received instructions from him in bhakti, and his family guru had not linked him through disciplic succession with Krishna. But by taking initiation from Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, he would be linked with Krishna. Bhaktisiddhanta, son of Bhaktivinoda Thakur and disciple of Gorkishore Das Babaji, was the guru in the 12th disciplic generation from Lord Chaitanya. He was the foremost Vedic scholar of the age, the expert Vaishnava who could guide one back to Godhead. He was empowered by his predecessors to work for the highest welfare by giving everyone Krishna consciousness, the remedy for all sufferings. Abai felt that he had already accepted Srila Bhaktisiddhanta as his spiritual master, and that from their very first meeting, he had already received his orders. Now, if Srila Bhaktisiddhanta would accept him as his disciple, the relationship would be confirmed. He was coming so soon after Abai had seen and heard him in Vrindavan. That was how Krishna acted through his representative. It was as if his spiritual master, in coming to where Abai had his family and business, he was coming to draw him further into spiritual life. Without Abai's having attempted to bring it about, his relationship with Srila Bhaktisiddhanta was deepening. Now Srila Bhaktisiddhanta was coming to him as if by higher arrangement. One day, on the day of the ceremony, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati met with his disciples at the Allahabad Gaudiya Math on South Malika Street, where he was speaking Harikatha and taking questions. Atulananda Brahmachari took the opportunity to present several devotees, Abai amongst them, as candidates for initiation. The Allahabad devotees were proud of Mr. Day, who regularly attended the month in the evening. Led bhajans, listened to the teachings and spoke them himself, and often brought respectable guests. He had contributed money and had induced his business colleagues also to do so. With folded palms, Abai looked up humbly at his spiritual master. He and Srila Bhaktisiddhanta were now face to face, and Srila Bhaktisiddhanta recognized him and was visibly pleased to see him. He already knew him. Yes, he said, exchanging looks with Abai. He likes to hear. He does not go away. I have marked him. I will accept him as my disciple. At the moment, and the words became impressed into his being, Abai was in ecstasy. Atulananda was pleasantly surprised that his Guru Day was already in approval of Mr. Day. Other disciples in the room were also pleased to witness Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati's immediate acceptance of Mr. Day as a good listener. Some of them wondered when or where Srila Bhaktisiddhanta had arrived at such an estimation of the young pharmacist. At the initiation, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati was seated on a Vyasasan, and the room was filled with guests and members of the Gaudiya Math. Those to be initiated sat around a small mound of earth where one of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati's sannyasi prepared a fire and offered grains and fruits into the flame, while everyone chanted mantras for purification. Abhai's sister and brother were present, but not his wife. Abhai basked in the presence of his Gurudev. Yes, he likes to hear. The words of his spiritual master and his glance of recognition had remained with Abhai. Abhai would continue pleasing his spiritual master by hearing well. Then he thought, I will be able to speak well. The Vedic literature described 9 processes of devotional service, the first of which was Shravanam, hearing about Krishna. Then came Kirtanam, chanting about and glorifying him. By sitting patiently and hearing at Koshi, he had pleased Krishna's representative. And when Krishna's representative was pleased, Krishna was pleased. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati had not praised him for donating money to the month and hadn't advised him to forsake his family and business and travel with him, nor had he asked Abhai to perform great austerities like the yogis who mortify their body with fasts and difficult vows. But he likes to hear, he had said. I have marked him. Abhai thought about it, and again, listened carefully as his spiritual master conducted the initiation. Finally, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta called for Abhai to come forward and receive the Harinam initiation by accepting his beads. After offering prostrated obeisances, Abhai extended his right hand and accepted the strand of japa beads from the hand of his spiritual master. At the same time, he also received a sacred Brahminical thread, signifying second initiation. Usually, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta gave the first initiation, Harinam, and only after some time, when he was satisfied with the progress of the disciple, he would give the second initiation. But he offered Abhai both initiations at the same time. Now, Abhai was a full-fledged disciple, a Brahmin, who could perform sacrifices, such as this fire yajna for initiation. He could worship the deity in the temple and would be expected to discourse widely. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta added Aravinda, lotus, to his name. Now he was Abhai Charan Aravinda. After Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati left Allahabad for Calcutta, Abhai keenly felt the responsibility of working on behalf of his spiritual master. At the initiation, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta had instructed Abhai to study Rupa Goswami's Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, which outlined the loving exchange between Krishna and his devotees and explained how a devotee can advance in spiritual life. Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu was a law book for devotional service, and Abhai would study it carefully. He was glad to increase his visits to the Allahabad Center and to bring new people. Even at his first meeting with his spiritual master, he had received the instruction to preach the mission of Lord Chaitanya, and now he began steadily and carefully considering how to do so. Preaching was a responsibility at least as binding as that of home and business. Even in his home, he wanted to engage as far as possible in preaching. He discussed with his wife about his plans for inviting people into their home, offering them prasadam, and holding discussions about Krishna. She didn't share his enthusiasm. Srila Prabhupada said, my wife was a devotee of Krishna, but she had some other idea. Her idea was just to worship the deity at home, live peacefully. My idea was preaching. It was not possible for Abhai to travel with his spiritual master or even to see him often. His pharmaceutical business kept him busy and he traveled frequently. Whenever possible, he tried to time business trip to Calcutta when his spiritual master was also there. Thus, over the next 4 years, he managed to see his spiritual master perhaps a dozen times. Whenever Abhai visited Calcutta, the assistant librarian at the Gaudiya Math, Nityananda Brahmachari, would meet him at Howrah train station with a two-horse carriage belonging to the Math. Nityananda saw Abhai as an unusually humble and tolerant person. As they rode together to the Math, Abhai would inquire eagerly into the latest activities of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, his traveling, his publishing, how many centers were currently open, how his disciples were doing. They wouldn't talk much about Abhai's business. Abhai would stay at the Gaudiya Math usually for about 5 days. Sometimes he would visit one of his sisters who lived in Calcutta, but his main reason for coming was Srila Bhaktisiddhanta. And Abai would take advantage of every opportunity to hear him. Abai didn't try to become a leader in the inner management of the Gaudiya Math. His spiritual master initiated 18 sannyasis who carried out most of the preaching and leadership of the mission. Abai was always the householder, occupied with his own business and family, never living within the month except for brief visits. And yet he began to develop a very close relationship with his spiritual master. Sometimes Abai would go to see him at the Chaitanya Mat, at the birthplace of Lord Chaitanya in Mayapur. One day at the Chaitanya Mat, Abai was in the courtyard when a large poisonous snake crawled out in front of him. Abai called out for his godbrothers, but when they came, everyone simply stood looking uncertain what to do. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta came out on the veranda of the second floor, glanced down, saw the snake, and immediately ordered, "Kill it." A boy then took a large step and killed the snake. Srila Prabhupada says, so I thought, how is it that Guru Maharaj ordered the snake to be killed? I was a little surprised, but later I saw this verse, and then I was very glad. Modikta sadur api rishika sarpahatya. Even saintly persons take pleasure in the killing of a scorpion or a snake. It had remained a doubt how Guru Maharaj ordered the snake to be killed. But when I read this verse, I was very much pleased that this creature or creatures like the snake should not be shown any mercy. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta was reputed to be so austere and so strong in argument against other philosophies that even his own disciples were cautious in approaching him if he were sitting alone or if they had no specific business with him. Yet even though Abai's contact with him was quite limited, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta would always treat him kindly. Srila Prabhupada says, whenever I met my Guru Maharaj, he would always treat me very affectionately. Sometimes my godbrothers would criticize because I would talk a little freely with him, and they would quote this English saying, "Fools rush in where angels fear to tread." But I would think, fool, well, maybe that is the way I am. My Guru Maharaj was always very, very affectionate to me. When I offered obeisances, he used to return, "Dasosmi, I am your servant." Sometimes as Srila Bhaktisiddhanta paced back and forth, chanting the Hare Krishna Mahamantra aloud while fingering his beads, Abai would enter the room and also chant, walking alongside his spiritual master. Once, when Abai entered Srila Bhaktisiddhanta's room, his spiritual master was sitting on a couch, and Abai took his seat beside him on an equal level. But then he noticed that all the other disciples in the room were sitting on a lower level at their spiritual master's feet. Abai kept his seat, and Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati said nothing of it. But Abai never again sat on an equal level with his spiritual master. Once in a room with many disciples, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta was speaking, and Abai listened when an old man beside Abai motioned to him. As Abai leaned over to hear what the man wanted, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta suddenly spoke out in annoyance at the two apparently inattentive students. "Babu," he first addressed the old man beside Abai. "Do you think you have purchased me with your 150 rupees per month donation?" And then turning to Abai, "Why don't you come up here and speak instead of me?" Abai was outwardly mortified, yet he treasured the rebuke. It was in a private meeting that Srila Bhaktisiddhanta once told Abai of the risks he took by preaching so boldly. Srila Prabhupada says, my Guru Maharaj's contribution is that he defeated the caste Goswamis. He defeated this Brahmanism. He did it the same way as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu did. As Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, Kiba Vipra, Kiba Nyasi, Sudra Kene Naya Ye, Krishna Tattva Veta Se, Guru Kaya. There is no consideration whether one is a sannyasi, a brahmana, a Sudra, or a grahasta. No, anyone who knows the science of Krishna, he is all right. He is Goswami, and he is Brahman. But no one else taught that since Lord Chaitanya. This was my Guru Maharaj's contribution, and for this reason, he had to face so many vehement protests from these Brahmin caste Goswamis. Once they conspired to kill him. My Guru Maharaj told me personally, by his grace, when we used to meet alone, he used to talk about so many things. He was so kind that he used to talk with me, and he personally told me that these people, they wanted to kill me. They collected 25,000 rupees and went to bribe the police officer in charge of the area, saying, you take these 25,000 rupees, we shall do something against Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, and you don't take any steps. He could understand that they wanted to kill him. So the police officer frankly came to Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. Of course, we accept bribes and we indulge in such things, but not for a sadhu, not for a saintly person. I cannot dare it. So the police officer refused and said to my Guru Maharaj, you take care. This is the position. So vehemently they protested. But he liked the boldness of his disciples. Have I heard of an occasion when one of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati's disciples had been very outspoken at a public meeting and denounced a highly regarded Mayavadi monk as a foolish priest. The remark caused a disruption at the meeting, and some of the disciples reported the incident to Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, thinking he would be displeased that his disciple had caused a disturbance. But Srila Bhaktisiddhanta was pleased and remarked, he has done well. His displeasure occurred rather when he heard of someone's compromise. Srila Prabhupada says, when my Guru Maharaj was present, even big scholars were afraid to talk with even his beginning students. My Guru Maharaj was called living encyclopedia. He could talk with anyone on any subject. He was so learned and no compromise. So-called saints, avatars, yogi, anyone who was false was an enemy to my Guru Maharaj. He had never compromised. Some God brothers complained that this preaching was chopping technique and it would not be successful. But those who criticized him fell down. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta was known as the Simha Guru, Lion Guru. On occasion, when he saw someone he knew to be proponent of impersonalism, he would call that person over and challenge. Why are you treating the people with Mayavadi philosophy? He would often tell his disciples not to compromise. Why should you go flatter? He would say. You should speak the plain truth without any flattery. Money will come anyway. Whenever Srila Bhaktisiddhanta wrote or spoke the Vaishnava philosophy, he was uncompromising. The conclusion was according to the Shastra and the logic strong. But sometimes the Bhai would hear his spiritual master express the eternal teachings in a unique way that Abhay knew he would never forget. Don't try to see God, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta would say, but act in such a way that God sees you. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta condemned temple proprietors who made a business of showing the deity for a living. To be a sweeper in the street was more honorable, he said. He coined a Bengali phrase, Salagamam Dwara Badam Bangam. The priests are taking the Shalagram deity as a stone for cracking nuts. In other words, if a person shows the Shalagram form of the Lord or any form of the deity simply with a view to make money, then he is seeing the deity not as the Lord, but as a stone, a means for earning his livelihood. Abhay had the opportunity to see his spiritual master deal with the nationalist Subhash Chandra Bose, who had been Abhay's schoolmate at Scottish Churches College. Bose had come in somewhat critical mood, concerned about Srila Bhaktisiddhanta's recruiting young men into religious life. Srila Prabhupada says, Subhash Chandra Bose came to my Guru Maharaj and said, so many people you have captured, they're doing nothing for nationalism. My Guru Maharaj replied, well, for your national propaganda, you require very strong men, but these people are very weak. You can see they are very skinny. So don't put your glance upon them. Let them eat something and chant Hare Krishna. In this way, he avoided him. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta used to say that when the day came when high court judges were devotees of Krishna with Vaishnav tilak on their foreheads, then he would know that the mission of spreading Krishna consciousness was becoming successful. He said that Jesus Christ was a Shakti Avatar, an empowered incarnation of God. How can it be otherwise, he said? He sacrificed everything for God. In his scholarly language, he declared, the materialistic demeanor cannot possibly stretch to the transcendental autocrat. But sometimes in speech, he phrased it in a more down-to-earth way. The mundane scholars who are trying to understand the Supreme Lord by their senses and mental speculation are like a person trying to taste honey in a bottle by licking the outside of the bottle. Philosophy without religion, he said, is dry speculation, and religion without philosophy is sentiment and sometimes fanaticism. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta said the whole world was simply a society of cheaters and cheated. He gave the example that loose women often visit certain holy places in India with the idea of seducing the sadhus, thinking that to have a child by a sadhu is prestigious. And immoral men dress themselves as sadhus, hoping to be seduced by the cheating women. His conclusion, a person should aspire to leave the material world and go back to Godhead, because this material world is not a fit place for a gentleman. Abai saw that when disciples asked his spiritual master about something in the future, he never replied, yes, it is going to happen, or yes, we are going to do it. Rather, he would say, yes, if Krishna desires, it may be. Although in his younger years, he had been an astrologer and able to predict the future, he had given it up. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta was a lifelong brahmachari and was very strict about avoiding association with women. Once Abai was sitting with his spiritual master when another disciple was present along with his young wife. The wife asked Srila Bhaktisiddhanta if she might speak with him privately, and he replied, no, whatever it is, you can ask here. I cannot see you in private. Abai was impressed by this, since Srila Bhaktisiddhanta was in his 60s and the girl could have been his granddaughter. Regardless, he would not speak with any woman alone. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta liked to make his disciples into sannyasis. Well, one day, one of his sannyas disciples was forcibly dragged away by his wife. In tears, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta lamented that he was unable to save that soul. Yet he did not speak disparagingly of Krishna-conscious family life. I would have sex hundreds of times if I thought I could raise Krishna-conscious children. He would send his brahmacharis out to sell Gaudiya Math magazine and books, and even if a brahmachari were able to sell only one or two, it would please him very much, and he would exclaim, you are so nice. In considering whether essays were worthy for publication, he would count how many times the word Krishna or Chaitanya had been used. If these holy names had been quoted sufficiently, he would say, that's all right, this can be used. He would say in Bengali, Pranachayar se hetu prachar. A person must have life to be a preacher. A dead man cannot preach. When some of his preachers who had gone to chant and speak reported that no one attended their meeting, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta replied, it doesn't matter. The four walls will hear you. That is sufficient. Don't be disappointed. Go on chanting. And in commenting on the fact that some of his disciples had fallen away, some of soldiers will die, he said. He did not want his disciples to lead an easygoing life. He once criticized his disciples for being ease-loving, nor should they attempt to practice austerities in seclusion. He would sing a song of his own composition, Dushtamana Tumi Kishara Vaishnava. My dear mind, what kind of a Vaishnava are you? You are chanting Hare Krishna in a solitary place, imitating the great saints Haridat Thakur and Rupa Goswami, but your meditation is actually to think of women and money. Your mind is filled with such dirty things, so your bhajan is simply cheating. He taught that if a devotee gave up his preaching in the city in favor of solitary meditation, that was a method of cheating by imitating the great saints in hopes of getting cheap adoration from others. Therefore, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta never liked to open a branch of Gaudiya Math in a place that was not very much populated. Abai went on listening to his spiritual master at every opportunity, but rarely did Abai put a philosophical inquiry before him. He prefers simply to listen. Srila Prabhupada says, I never ask my spiritual master a question except one. How shall I? Day became prominent in the pharmaceuticals. He worked well for Bose's laboratory, and other companies wanted him as their agent. He had hopes of becoming rich. Srila Prabhupada says, my Guru Maharaj ordered me, you do this. But I thought, let me first of all become a rich man, then I shall do. In the beginning, I was thinking, now my godbrothers have taken sannyas. They are begging from door to door. Why shall I beg? Let me earn money and start Krishna consciousness. The biggest pharmaceutical company in India, Bengal Chemical, made him an offer. But when they did not fulfill all his conditions, he turned them down. Though later he regretted it, Still, there were good signs. An astrologer predicted he would become one of India's richest men. And Dr. Kartik Bose had told his father-in-law, he is a very intelligent man. But there were also other signs. As many accounts as he had secured by his wide travels, there were also that many bills to collect. Many of the accounts began to fall behind in their payments, and the accumulated debt began to grow until he owed Bose's laboratory a total of 10,000 rupees. And Abai had enemies. The manager who had taken over Abai's old position as office manager with Bose Laboratory in Calcutta tried to turn Dr. Bose against Abai, insinuating that he was too independent. They had heard of his negotiating with Bengal Chemical, and the new manager attributed the accumulating debt to Abai's lack of loyalty to the Home Office. Kartik Bose remained favorably inclined towards Abai, but when the debt became financial strain, he went to Allahabad to investigate. At Prayag Pharmacy, he spoke with Dr. Ghosh, who told him, he is a very honest man. It is no fault of his. In good faith, he gave all these chemicals, drugs, and credit. He can't realize the money. All right, Dr. Bose said, but I can't go on giving him money. Abai went over the accounts with Dr. Kartik Bose, and they both agreed that the best way to settle the matter was for Dr. Bose to take over the Prayag Pharmacy and all of Abai's accounts. Thus, Abai was absolved of debt, but unemployed. Atulananda Brahmachari approached him. Why don't you come to the month? Now you are free. Abai began to visit more frequently, and nearby Rupa Goswami Math, where the Gaudiya Math men in their renounced Brahmachari spirit suggested that he depend completely on Krishna and give up the world and move in with them and become a full-time preacher. But for Abai, there was no question of abandoning business. If he did, what would happen to his wife and children? Radharani now had third child, a son, so the financial responsibility was increasing. The Brahmacharis were well-intentioned in asking him to renounce the world, and it was fine for them to do so, but Abai couldn't take it very seriously. Without work, he was in a critical situation, but he remained confident and eager to take on new employment. There were other companies that would like to have him as their agent, and some of his old customers wanted him to service them, even if he weren't Bose's man. Abai thought about starting his own pharmaceutical laboratory. Finally, he decided he would start his own factory, but in a much bigger city than Allahabad. He settled on Bombay. He decided that his family should remain in Allahabad, and he and his brother would travel to Bombay, take an apartment, and survey the prospects for starting a factory there. Although Radharani was used to her husband's traveling, it had never been as extended as this promised to be. Abai talked with her, explaining that his recent business loss had been the arrangement of Krishna. Now again, to provide for his family, he would have to start a large business, and that could best be done in a major city like Bombay. But family life in Allahabad would be temporarily disrupted. He set up a very small pharmaceutical manufacturing operation there in Allahabad, but his nephew Tulasi in charge, and left for Bombay with his brother. In Bombay, Abai rented an apartment on Grant Road, and applying the knowledge he had gained as manager of Bose Laboratory, started his own pharmaceutical factory. Business was going well when a large company, Smith Institute, wanted him as their sales agent. Abai took the job, thinking that he could earn money as Smith's representative, while at the same time developing his own business. He was confident of his ability to earn money in the pharmaceutical line. While traveling around Bombay on business, Abai met some members of the Gaudiya Math, Bhakti Rakshas Sridhar Maharaj and Bhakti Saranga Goswami, senior sannyas, disciples of Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati. Abai recognized them as respected godbrothers, well-versed in the scriptures and Vaishnava philosophy. It seemed he was destined to find his godbrothers wherever he went. Both he and the sannyasis regarded their apparently odd meeting in the city as auspicious. Like the members of the Gaudiya Math he had met in Allahabad, these preachers had no permanent center, but they were trying to start one. On behalf of Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati, they were going door to door soliciting supporters for a Bombay branch of the Gaudiya Math. Abai wanted to help. As a fellow godbrother in the service of his spiritual mastery, offered them his services. although as sannyasis, they were in a superior position. In their somewhat helpless condition, they looked up to Abai for help. They had been staying in a small place on Proctor Road and had found little opportunity to make important contacts. Now they formed a team. Abai introducing the sannyasis to business acquaintances and the sannyasis taking donations for the new center. Abai Charan Aravinda was good at collecting funds and he willingly gave his time. Again, his godbrothers began pulling at him to participate fully in the Gaudiya Math preaching. Srila Prabhupada says, we made a party for collecting alms. Sridhar Maharaj, Goswami Maharaj, and myself, I took them to some of my chemist and doctor friends, and in 2 days we collected 500 rupees. Sridhar Maharaj would speak, I would introduce, and Goswami Maharaj would canvass. So Goswami Maharaj very much appreciated it, and he began to speak highly about me. For Babu, he is so expert. He has got so many friends. He has collected so much. Why should he not be in charge of our month? Why shouldn't he live with us? Why is he living separately? Abai visited the Mott headquarters on Proctor Road, where he joined the devotees in Kirtan and heard them speak from the Bhagavatam. At the sannyas' request, Abai took the responsibility of finding a more suitable place for the Bombay Center. Wherever he went in the city, he looked for likely locations. Just as he had responsibilities for his wife and family in Allahabad, by dint of his initiation, he was bound to assist his godbrothers. He had to take the part in preaching, not simply struggle so that he might exist in the world of business competition. But he didn't think he would ever live like the sannyasis, no possessions, no business, sleeping on the bare floor, taking only simple meals. February 25th, 1935, it was the 62nd birthday of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. At Jagannath Puri, where Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati was residing, the devotees observed the day with ceremony. At the small Bombay Center, a few disciples planned an evening observance and invited local people. For the occasion, Abai wrote a poem. Adore ye all the happy day, blessed than heaven, sweeter than May. When he appeared at Puri, the holy place, my Lord and Master, his divine grace. O my Master, the evangelic angel, give us thy light, light up thy candle. Struggle for existence, the human race, the only hope is divine grace. Misled we are, all going astray. Save us, Lord, our fervent pray. Wonder thy ways, to turn our face, adore thy feet, your divine grace. Forgotten Krishna, we are fallen souls, praying most heavy, the illusions toll. Darkness around, all untraced, the only hope is divine grace. Message of service thou hast brought, a healthful life as Chaitanya wrought, unknown to all, it's full of grace, that's your gift, your divine grace. Absolute ascension thou hast proved, impersonal calamity thou hast moved. This gives us life anew and fresh, worship thy feet, your divine grace. Had you not come, who had told the message of Krishna, forceful and bold? That's your right, you have the mace, save me, a fallen, your divine grace. The line of service as drawn by you is pleasing and healthy like morning dew. The oldest of all, but in new dress, miracle done, your divine grace. Abai also composed a speech. When he read before the assembled guests and members of the Gaudiya Math, although his first language was Bengali, his English was clear and natural. Gentlemen, the offerings of such an homage has been arranged this evening to the Acharya Dev is not a sectarian concern, but because when we speak of the fundamental principle of Guru Dev or Acharya Dev, we speak of something that is of universal application. There does not arise any question of discriminating my guru from yours or anyone else's. There is only one guru who appears in an infinity of forms to teach you, me, and all others. The guru or Acharya Dev, as we learn from bona fide scripture, delivers the message of the absolute world. I mean, the transcendental abode of the absolute personality, where everything non-differentially serves the absolute truth. Like the poem, the speech was personal, but even more than the poem. It was authoritative, philosophical preaching. The Godbrothers were impressed to hear Abai presenting the Vaishnava philosophy so expertly. How was it possible? Of course, it should not have come as a surprise. He had heard the Vaishnava philosophy from Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, just like his Godbrothers. Why should he not be able to enunciate the teachings of his spiritual master, having heard from him and having read Gita and Bhagavatam and Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu? Was he not a devotee in the Parampara? But until now, no one knew he could preach in English so expertly. Therefore, if the absolute truth is one, about which we think there is no difference of opinion, the Guru also cannot be two. The Acharya Dev, to whom we have assembled tonight to offer our humble homage, is not the Guru of a sectarian institution or one of many different exponents of the truth. On the contrary, he is the Jagat Guru, or the Guru of all of us. The only difference is that some obey him wholeheartedly and others do not obey him directly. The Guru of whom Abai spoke, of course, was Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, the representative of the original compiler of the scriptures, Vyasadeva. Abai explained how Lord Krishna had delivered transcendental knowledge to Brahma, the creator of this particular universe. From Brahma, the knowledge had descended to Narada, and from Narada to Vyas, from Vyas to Madhva. Because Srila Bhaktisiddhanta was presenting Vedic knowledge as is, without any interpretation, in Parampara, he was the bona fide Acharya who could enlighten others with revealed knowledge of the Vedas. Abai continued, "Gentlemen, our knowledge is so poor, our senses are so imperfect, and our sources are so limited that it is not possible for us even to have the slightest knowledge of the absolute region without surrendering ourselves at the lotus feet of Sri Vyasadeva or his bona fide representative. This transcendental knowledge," Abai explained, "had been known in India for thousands of years, and this knowledge, although presented obscure, was India's gift, real gift to the world. We must conclude that the darkness of the present age is not due to a lack of material advancement, but that we have lost the clue to our spiritual advancement, which is the prime necessity of human life and the criterion of the highest type of civilization. Throwing of bombs from airplanes is no advancement of civilization from the primitive, uncivilized way of dropping big stones on the heads of the enemies from the tops of hills. Improvement of the art of killing our neighbors by inventing machine guns and means of poisonous gases is certainly no advancement from primitive barbarism, priding itself on its art of killing by bows and arrows, nor does the development of a sense of pampered selfishness prove anything more than intellectual animalism. Thus, while others were yet in the womb of historical oblivion, the sages of India had developed a different kind of civilization, which enables us to know ourselves. They had discovered that we are not at all material entities, but that we are all spiritual, permanent, and non-destructible servants of the Absolute. The speech continued, describing the horrible consequences of a misspent human life, the sufferings of repeated birth and death. Again and again, Abai stressed the need to surrender to the spiritual master. He criticized empirical mundane philosophers, godless politicians, and blind sense gratifiers. He repeatedly pointed to the soul's natural and sublime position as the servant of God and as the servant of the pure devotee of God. Abai, an initiated disciple of his spiritual master for a little more than 2 years, referring to himself as a student, continued, "Gentlemen, although we are like ignorant children in the knowledge of the transcendence, still his divine grace, my Gurudev, has kindled a small fire within us to dissipate the invincible darkness of the empirical knowledge, and we are so much so on the safe side that no amount of philosophical argument of the empiric schools of thought can deviate us an inch from the position of our eternal dependence on the lotus feet of his divine grace. And we are prepared to challenge the most erudite scholars of the Mayavad school on this vital issue, that the personality of Godhead and his transcendental sports in Golok alone constitute the sublime information of the Vedas." Then he ended his speech with an eloquent prayer of submission. Personally, I have no hope to have any direct service for coming crores of births of the sojourn of my life, but I am confident that someday or other I shall be delivered from this mire of delusion in which I am at present so deeply sunk. Therefore, let me with all my earnestness pray at the lotus feet of my divine master to let me suffer the lot which I am destined to do for all my past misdoings. But let me have this power of recollection that I am nothing but a tiny servant of the almighty absolute Godhead, realized through the unflinching mercy of my divine master. Let me therefore bow down at his lotus feet with all the humility at my command. He submitted both the poem and the speech to the harmonist. The poem, Abhai's first publication, announced him as a competent writer in English, and Swami Bhakti Pradeep Tirth, editor of the harmonist, informally dubbed Abhai as Kavi, the learned poet. Some of Abhai's godbrothers also picked up on the name and began calling him Kavi. Most of them, even the sannyasis, were not so proficient in English, but Abhai was not ordinary. They could appreciate that the poem was personal, written out of Abhai's genuine worship and his joy at having accepted a genuine spiritual master, but it was also written strictly in accord with the conclusions of the scriptures. For Abhai, however, the glory of his Srivyaspuj homage came when the poem reached Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati and gave him pleasure. One stanza specifically made Srila Bhaktisiddhanta so happy that he made a point of showing it to all his guests. Absolute is sentient, thou hast proved. In personal calamity, thou hast moved. Somehow, in this simple couplet, Abhai had captured the essence of his spiritual master's preaching against the Mayavadis, and Srila Bhaktisiddhanta took it as an indication of how well Abhai knew the mind of his Gurudev. Abhai was delighted when he heard that the couplet was pleasing to his spiritual master. One of Abhai's godbrothers compared this verse by Abhai to a verse in which Sri Rupa Goswami had expressed the inner thinking of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and had thus moved him to ecstasy. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati also found the essay pleasing, and he showed it to some of his confidential associates and devotees. He instructed the editor of the harmonist, whatever he writes, publish it. Abhai thought it only natural that he should have many business enemies or competitors. It was a sign of success. But his Bombay competition caused him to lose another good chance to become wealthy. The enemy was the son of Abhai's supervisor at Smith Institute. Both son and father complained to the Smith Institute executives that Abhai Charande was pushing goods from his